One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Reason Reborn. I am here with my co-host, Mr. Cardiacsumo. How are you today, sir?
Back in California, coast to coast, back and forth every day. What's up?
Yeah, you had a great flight, I heard.
I haven't been having much luck with the airports recently because I don't know if I mentioned before, but when I went to Florida, or when I tried to go to Florida a few weeks ago, my stay at the airport was not great. My plane got delayed like 9 hours, and then I was going to miss my connection flight. So I just had to cancel that flight and try again in a couple of days. So I got shit coming and going.
Yeah. Of course, I wouldn't be getting... Well, you know what? I'm going to have to eventually get over that. Like, I feel like enough people in this area, at least, have been vaccinated. Like, I wouldn't go to Florida for shit unless I was, like, fucking cocooned in, like, you know, bubble wrap. Like, I know Florida's nice. It's lovely. It's beautiful. Fun, great weather, all that, but yeah, it's still
great weather.
You know, well,
like rain, I guess. Sure.
Well, yeah, it is hurricane season now, an early hurricane season because you know climate, control is not a thing. It's fake. It's a hoax. So that's why we have early hurricane season. You know, we just had like a tropical storm dump all the fuck over us last week. But sure, there's nothing wrong with the climate, y'all. Everything's fine. Anyway.
My main thought about Florida was that it was hot as fuck when I got there. But, you know, we're in the summer, so that's not crazy. But I guess the difference is the humidity there compared to here in California. It just feels fucking hot and muggy. At least to me.
Yeah. I mean, ain't it always kind of hot and muggy there, though?
I don't know why my camera just decided to make me frog Thor for a second.
Because it wants frog.
But yeah, doing good. I'm actually going to head back briefly at the end of next month because I'm going to be heading back into the office in the beginning of September. So I'm squeezing in one more trip.
Oh, your job's going back to at work?
Yes, sir.
Interesting. Because I know a lot of people have said that their jobs aren't even talking about going back until possibly next year.
I think there's a wide variety because I've heard people have gone back. Well, some jobs never really stayed away that long, especially if they were considered essential. But I've heard people coming back as of a few months ago, more or less, especially particularly I should say, when the vaccine started to roll out, and you know, some employers are more gung-ho about making vaccination a requirement than others.
Yeah.
So I'm sure those guys are feel a little bit more confident since they know by rule that their employees are vaccinated.
Yeah, I have one friend. There's like they're only going to bring back certain people, while other people they're going to be like, your job's not. You don't need to be here to do your job, and you're already doing your job the same at home. So why the fuck we need to have you here? Which I think is pretty sweet. If you're on the list of you don't need to be here to work, because we discussed this on a previous podcast, I think, but I wouldn't want to go back to work either, considering all the benefits that this has garnered people. Like, if you have kids, you don't have to necessarily pay for daycare because you have your kids at home. You just need to do your work, you know. You're not spending money on gas or drive, and since you're not driving, you don't have to do maintenance on your car as frequent, you know. You're not spending a lot of food eating out because you're going, to work and you may not remember to bring your lunch, all that stuff.
I find it interesting because it does open up a lot of conversation, and some flexibility is nice because even I said we're going back in September, but it's a bit of a hybrid thing. We're not going back like every single traditional work day, I believe. I need to look to see what was decided, but I remember months back people talking about like, well, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, something like that, where there's still some of the days at home. And I know, for example, my team lead, I should say, isn't coming back just yet because, it's easy for all of us to think like, well, everybody can get vaccinated, but a lot of kids still can't. And he has 2 young kids that he's still concerned about who are not eligible for vaccination yet. So he's not coming in probably for another couple of months until they're eligible and they can get vaccinated. So it makes for like a wide variety of different situations for people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how normal is once we get there. Like, it's funny, as we record, there's the WWE going back to quote unquote normal by having people in the stands soon. Now, are there people at the pay-per-view?
Oh yeah, there's
okay.
There's a full crowd.
I didn't know if it was today or if it was going to be, of course, because it's in Texas, and in Texas, Florida, of course. I'm curious as what their travel schedule is going to be, because I know AEW has a show coming up in New York at Arthur Ashe Stadium, but they're not going to have full capacity.
And I think that kind of thing, shows you the sort of regional political difference between different states, right? Because, if you look at AEW and WWE's sort of pandemic schedule and their schedule as they come back, both of them spent the pandemic mostly in Florida because Florida was one of those states that just had sort of allowed it. You know what I mean?
All right.
And even now, as they start to come back, both of them started out in Florida. I think AEW went through, they were stationed in Jacksonville. I think they went through Miami or something, and then their last show was in Texas. WWE pretty much went the same way. I think they were in Florida, and now they're in Texas as well. So it's just easy for them to travel to these states that already have looser restrictions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you say, if you go out to New York, like, yeah, they're gonna go, but probably not full capacity. So we talk about the differences in how people are returning to work, but there's also just like state-wise differences in how we kind of treat this thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because I found out right before we started recording that BlurredCon was going on in Virginia. Virginia's not loose. They have definitely it's like a bluish purple state, you could say. So I was surprised when I saw that they were allowing a convention to happen. It doesn't seem like it's like a huge crowd, but at the same time, it's a healthy amount of people. Also makes me realize that's why the harbor was so popping this weekend, because everybody was probably staying at the hotels for BlurredCon. Huh.
I don't know. It's all very strange. I think we talked about this on the podcast before too, but there is varying levels of comfort around doing these kind of things. Returning to normal, going around people. When I went to for example, I went to like a grocery shop. I went grocery shopping in Florida, and I guess masks aren't mandated indoors because like half of us wore them inside the store, another half just kind of walked around not caring.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that kind of happen more here, where like people are going to places without masks. And it's funny, I actually kind of get funny looks at times in some places that I have on a mask, which I find weird because like y'all do know it's still like something going on here, right?
Do they? I mean, I don't know how long you want to spend on this particular topic, but I do think there's just a weird difference in how people consume the news around this and how they think about this. I was talking to my mom when I was in Florida, and she was, she's a nurse, and she was talking about a family friend who had somebody to get, had somebody come do some work on her house or something like that. I can't remember what he was there for. But he had come to that family friend's house, and that family friend was wearing a mask, and the worker was surprised. He's like, people are still wearing masks. He didn't say it like that because he's Jamaican, but I'm translating it for you. He's like, people still wearing masks, and it is this weird sort of thing where I don't think people realize you can and probably should still wear masks at least in some context. And you shouldn't be surprised to see other people wearing them. So that there is something going on there that I don't quite know how to address.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's that they're not aware or not paying attention, or they heard what they wanted to hear and they were like, okay, cool. I just feel like it's the people who didn't give a fuck in the first place. And they're just like, okay, because being someone who do DoorDash, you see it all the time. You see people just walk up into a place and then they'd be like, and then they'll pull their shirt over their face, or they'll grab like a scarf or handkerchief or whatever and try to wrap it around their face and make like, a makeshift mask on the go because they don't care.
Well, at the airport, I saw somebody not wearing one, and I assume they were just there to pick someone up, but they were inside, and they're, you hear reminders over the thing that you better be wearing a mask or you might be charged with, or, it's against the rules. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a secret.
Yeah. And I think a lot of places, even though they do that, they're kind of lax too, because they're just like tired of having to like, which I kind of can't blame them. Like, get tired of telling, in particularly grown people, to behave. Like, you're a fucking adult, act like one, but people just lose their shit. Yeah.
True enough. I think in certain places it's just hard to police too, because I kind of looked around when I saw that person, and sure enough, there was just nobody who worked there in the general area at the time, which is probably part of why they felt like they could just stand there with no mask, because there was nobody in the immediate zone to kind of do anything about it. Well, which it just goes to show, I think some people are gonna, even if they recognize the rules, that they can find any opportunity to kind of fucking ignore it, they're gonna do it, even for a brief moment.
Yeah. Which is why we have shit like what's happening in one of the things I wanted to discuss tonight. This is just a brief discussion. The Olympics will be starting soon.
Sports.
Matter of days. And while Japan continuing for us to deal with the surge of COVID cases, we still have things happening over here that's affecting our Olympic team. So, several athletes have either tested positive or come in contact with people who tested positive for COVID. Coco Gauff being the more recent one, she tested positive for COVID-19. She will no longer be a part of the Olympic tennis team. Another couple of notable names. Well, one other notable name is Bradley Beal. He was going to be on the men's basketball team, all-star shooting guard from the Washington Wizards. He is in COVID protocol, so he won't be making the trip. And I believe it was a couple of more players, but I can't remember who might have had the same thing. So they're not going to be going to, perform in the Olympics. And you have a lot of athletes kind of dropping out for health reasons or personal reasons. And maybe that's affected by the, situation over in Japan with them dealing with that health crisis. As we stated last podcast, they're not allowing people to actually attend the Olympic Games, so there won't be crowds, which is crazy. It's going to be weird watching the Olympics, which is a year behind, by the way. A lot of people probably forget the Olympics were supposed to be in 2020, but due to COVID, it had to be delayed. But now it's just going to be empty arenas and venues with the athletes. Oh, and you're going to have thousands of athletes. You're going to try to contain them like in a situation which I don't know how well prepared they were to make it a bubble, but you're going to have to try to contain thousands of people in a bubble, which is going to be wild.
I don't know how to ask this question, but like, I know when the Olympics come around, it's quite the production to get it up and going and all that stuff. But would it have been, for instance, particularly difficult to host it somewhere else? I mean, we've known Japan's having problems with this for a while now. It's not a secret.
The answer is yes. Because you have to think. Olympic locations are usually announced, I want to say at least 8 years in advance of when it actually occurs. Like you're going to get announcements this year for the next Olympics in probably like 28, 32, and 36. They usually do like 2 or 3. So they could like have time, to give all these places time to prepare, because it is a huge. How can I say this? Not evolution, but just a huge change that an area has to go through. Because the thing is, Tokyo is the host city. But there will be venues in other places like Tokyo, if I remember, isn't a coastal city. It's kind of close to the sea, but they need to have like other towns create venues for the waterborne sports. Like I know when it was in Atlanta, they did some of the stuff. They were able to do a lot of the stuff around Savannah because Savannah is. Hold on. They would do some of the stuff in Atlanta because they had facilities for different sports and whatnot. But when it came to the coastal stuff, they had to go to my hometown of Savannah to do like the boating things, the rowing, stuff like that, because Atlanta's not on the coast. So they had to create facilities within other parts of the state, in cities within a pretty close geographical area, so that they can host it. Now it's a little bit easier in the winter because most places they pick generally have those facilities. Like you mainly need to have snow. And indoor arenas that you could put ice in. So you could kind of, it's a little easier geographically with the choices that they make there. But with the Summer Olympics, like there were actually Olympic events happening in Washington, D.C. that year. It was in Atlanta. Because they just didn't have the facilities to do everything in Atlanta. You know, so I believe like Olympic soccer was around here or something, which was crazy. And we're like 12 hours away. 10 hours away. So it is a huge undertaking. It's not just the city, but the region, and sometimes, a little bit further reaching, depending on where you're hosting Olympics at. So, yeah, they need time to prepare that, and you can't just pull up sticks and be like, "Let's go here." Instead, because they've already invested millions of dollars into this. Olympics it's weird because for the short-term gain you get during the Olympic year with people coming in and stuff like that, you make a lot of money, but it could be a financial burden. It's going to be fucking hell to see the financial fallout for Tokyo because they ain't going to have the people traveling there now. So the city and the region aren't going to get the spectator, hotels, dining, shopping, tourism, all that. They're going to lose out completely on that money. So they pretty much just dumped a bunch of money into creating it, an environment to host this thing, and they ain't getting that money back. So I'm very, very curious what the financial ramifications are going to be for Tokyo. Like, what is going to be done to help them?
I wouldn't want to deal with the geopolitical issue with that because it feels like knowing that will be a problem. I would say we, as in the world, ought to do something about that, some sort of reimbursement. But I mean, I do think the Olympic Committee is its own organization that should be in charge of that. Although I'm sure they don't want to, suck up that loss either. They got their money to make, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. It is all it's kind of gross. And I guess somebody wants to push it back another year. I don't know how feasible that would be either, but.
Yeah, because you got to remember, there's games in 2024. See? Yeah.
It's a logistical nightmare. Because, I mean, outside of just that, too, like, I don't know how fun it's going to be to watch with nobody there. I mean, the stuff I like will probably be fine. Because I don't mind if there's no crowd for, like, the Olympic judo and taekwondo.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's not like they all have fairly large crowds for certain events.
I don't know how much that bothers other people. Like, it wouldn't bother me as much, especially because maybe, I've watched a lot of wrestling with little to no crowd. So maybe I've gotten a little more used to it than most people. But yeah, I can't wait to see how that all plays out. Enjoy the Olympics, guy. I feel like we've kind of rained on the parade that is the Olympics.
I mean, but it's a reminder of just where we are still. And I'm curious to see what people's reaction is going to be to it. Because again, we're in the period now where everybody's pretty much looking to get back to normal as quickly as possible. And you have these conventions that are happening now. You're having sporting events, at least here in some places overseas, having crowds now, be at minimum capacity and things like that. But, this is going to be a haunting reminder seeing one of the largest events, not just sporting events, but events, that are held being devoid of human beings other than the athletes or the participants.
Since you brought up the subject of people wanting to kind of get back to normal, like to kind of point out, I don't know if you've seen these recent reports about, people talking about like, oh, there's two Americas because the infection rate in areas of the country that aren't particularly vaccinated. Like, you're starting to see like a very noticeable difference in these regions that largely for political reasons have much lower vaccination rates, where they're getting a lot more infections, a lot more hospitalizations compared to the places that are more vaccinated. And, you're seeing all these maps that show how they pretty much align with how the general election went. The places that went more for Biden have more vaccination compared to the places that went for Trump. And it's like, this tale of two Americas shit is getting really old and dumb. I was talking to my mother, who's a nurse. It's like, it is mind-boggling to look at the evidence where, look, the places that don't have as much vaccination are sicker. And yet that doesn't seem to serve as useful evidence for people who are still unwilling to get it.
Yeah, it's funny because I forgot to add this to the list of topics, but yeah, recently we just saw that South Dakota is going off the rails. And I remember their governor was one of the ones who were really vocal about not shutting shit down. And look where we are.
So there is a bit of strangeness because, for the areas and the groups of people that got vaccinated and were taking it seriously and stuff, I understand that inclination to really want to start pushing back toward life being more like normal because, you put in the effort to isolate, to social distance, you got vaccinated as soon as possible. And, maybe for you and your area, depending on where you are, being back to normal is more viable than these other places in the country where they had a more flippant attitude about it. I'm not saying that, the line is that bold or anything, but it is a strange difference regionally in the country right now. Because I do think some regions are more justified in feeling like they can start getting back to normal than other places. And I think ironically, the places with the people who are more nervous about getting back to normal are the places that probably have a better chance of doing it because they're the more vaccinated regions. They're the places that take, social distancing more seriously. It's the places where they didn't seem to give a shit that should be more concerned.
Yeah, and it's just funny how like a lot of them are the ones too that not only didn't do what they needed to do, but like completely like adamant in expressing that they gonna do what the fuck they want and don't give a fuck. And it's just like, was it worth in the end?
I don't know that they've learned their lesson. I mean, they clearly haven't since they're not going, but I do believe, I don't remember if it was a serious thing, because I think I heard it on Colbert's show when I just happened to be perusing YouTube, but I believe in France, they have some sort of a vaccine passport system, and they're going to make it so that you need to have it to, go to restaurants and do all the fun shit. And like 1 million people or something like that signed up to get it. So I feel like here we've been very hesitant to have real consequences for not getting the vaccination, but maybe it's kind of gross for me to say it, but maybe you do need to start leaning toward that just because of how fucking stubborn so many pockets of the country are about it. Yeah. I know we did all that stuff in different parts of the country where you had like a vaccine lottery and maybe they're going to give you a bunch of beer or pay for your college or some dumb shit. But, maybe we need to stop waving the carrot and start throwing the stick.
Yeah. Well, how effective is the stick going to be? Yeah.
I mean, clearly the carrot hasn't been that effective, so got to try something.
True. I mean, it's...
Although I understand that will give fodder to the Fox News folks and that side of media who want to rail against this shit. But I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off base, but I don't know what you do at this point. Like, we have a very significant number of people in this country who socially are averse to doing the shit they ought to do. And I don't know how you do much about it.
Yeah. No, who knows? And now with this Delta variant that's ravaging things, like
Delta. The airline is going to have to change its name. Not that they're beloved, but you know.
I get it's just wild. Oh man. Moving on. Caitlyn Jenner has had herself quite the week. First, with the news coming out that while she attended the CPAC event where we had raving lunatics scream for Trump, including Trump himself, she was the victim of homophobic and transphobic slurs by her constituents. And then, to make herself feel better, she reportedly suspended her campaign to go film her reality TV show. So,
okay, one, I will say that I didn't know she was doing a show. Not that I've ever cared much for any of the shows that they produce, like Following the Kardashians or whatever it was called. But good for her having a show, I suppose. Two, and maybe this seems a bit dickish and, you know, partisan to me or whatever, but is it really a surprise that that group was transphobic?
well, it's one of those things that make you, like, I guess, go back to the idea of, like, why do certain groups even try to be a part of the Republican Party? You know, like, what is the purpose of you being black and Republican when there's a lot of races within the Republican Party? What is the point of you being Hispanic or Asian? You know, a woman, a homosexual, transgender, like all of these are groups that at some key point in recent history, not past history, recently, like we have the voter suppression against minorities. We have them pack the Supreme Court in hopes of getting rid of, you know, abortion. We have, like, you know, the same issues that we have with gender equality as far as like pay and jobs still going on, you know, them blocking measures that can help create equity in certain areas like sports and things like that. Like, we have them doing things like having transgender bans in like restrooms in certain areas and all of this stuff. Like, at some point within the last 5 years, they've attacked every one of the groups that I've named. Yet there still remains people within those groups who flock to them. Now, maybe it's because, you know, they have some conservative views as far as finances and things like that. But why don't you just be an independent? Like, why would you align yourself with them?
Yeah, I was about to say, because, you know, we talk about third parties and all that stuff. I'm not saying they all go the libertarian route or something like that, but you would think that kind of thing might spawn like some sort of other Republican Party minus the racism and sexism,
Right.
anti-LGBT stuff. Like I can imagine, and a part of the Republican Conservative Party just kind of like splintering off just around identity issues and forming probably not a big party, but a viable one, a viable third party compared to the others. At least rivaling like the libertarian group. So like I don't
Yeah, like why isn't there a moderate party, actual moderate party, or anything like that?
I don't know. Maybe it might just be the allure of being on the side of a particular team, one that's established and is fighting all the fucking time. I'm sure there is some level of bloodlust and excitement that comes with like saying fuck you to Democrats, and the Republican Party is the group that does that. It might not be as exciting to be part of a new party whose goal isn't to be a dick.
But it kind of goes like to where, like, you know, people would yell at me about Bernie should have won, Bernie would have beat Trump, all this. It's like, if Bernie would have been such a like influential person, why didn't he just run independent? Why did he need the Democratic Party? I think that you hit it right on the head, that these established, you know, parties have influence, unfortunately, that smaller groups can't. But at the same time, I feel like if you at least would start something new and start to get established, you may not win today, but you're going to win eventually if you truly believe in what you stand for. And if you think that you have enough people on your side now, fuck it, do it. Again, Bernie was supposed to be the Dragon Slayer to a lot of people. He should have ran independent, and then they should have, or if these people really backed him, they should have wrote him in, because you could do that. Like,
Sure. Even if you weren't going to win, you should still do it, if only so that you can be part of a group that actually is in line with your ideas, or at least things that are for your well-being. Like, if, you know, for example, if you are a gay Republican, I assume you want marriage rights, you know, for the LGBTQ community, as an example. Republican Party just does not support that shit, period, point blank. So why bother being with them? If you should create another organization purely so that you can have one that actually stands for the shit you want to do. It's not even like the Democrat Party, for example. Like, say you want to touch on something like climate change. They're all pretty on board with that, maybe to varying degrees. Like, you know, maybe Joe Manchin isn't as on board with certain popular Democratic things, but they are a more cohesive party as far as, all right, you know, they're fairly cohesive ideologically. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like night and day or something. If you go there and you're a gay person, it's not surprising. All right, let me restart this, but they won't do that for the same reason nobody really believes in a viable competitor for the NFL. You know, like, it's there, it's the big dog. You're not going to compete with it, so you may as well be part of it. And anybody who tries to create something different is pretty much going to get laughed out of the arena. One moment.
yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just weird. Like, maybe it's just that you believe in all the things except for the one thing that you are for. Because that does happen. Like, I'm sure we all know black people who are all for like racial equality and things like that, but will be like, well, at least, you know, equality for black people, but are like, I don't care for foreigners coming into this country and taking all our, like, you know, stuff like that. So it's just a
Sure.
weird thing. Like
I mean, but
people do.
You see it with religion too, right? Like,
Yeah.
they might agree with a shit ton of stuff, even some of the unsavory stuff, but like that one thing, they're just like, you know, we don't need to talk about that part. That's just the one part I don't agree with. Or, you know, maybe that's why I joined this particular sect or whatever. I guess people are willing to overlook things like that, sure, but in some cases they're pretty extreme things to overlook. I don't want to, you know, just to backtrack for a second, I don't want to come off like I'm victim blaming there, like, haha, Caitlyn Jenner is so dumb. What did she expect? You know, they shouldn't treat her like that. That's wrong. I'm just saying, if anyone was going to treat her like that, it would be them. I believe in the article you sent me, there was a man pretty much stalking her, you know, calling her Bruce, harassing her, trying to get her attention. And then when she left, saying all kinds of nasty things about her. It's like, if I just said without any context, there was a political event, somebody was following around a transgender person, dead naming them, blah, blah, blah. You could pretty much guess their political affiliation. You know what I mean? Like, you would be a little surprised if I said it was a Democrat. Not that there's no such thing as transphobia in the left or anything, but it would be surprising to you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a shame because like she's going to try to take down your governor, spitting, you know, Trumpism, you know, because she still supports Donald Trump. It's like you support a man who can give not one fuck about you or anything about, you know, your group or your rights as a person, a transgender person. Like your money will only get you so far. It clearly doesn't get you the respect of your quote unquote constituents, you know, nor does it get their backing politically.
I still think it's worth pointing out that there's no reason to think of her as a reasonable option as a politician, a leader like that. What experience does she have? What ideas does she have? I mean, can anybody even explain what about her platform is interesting? I can't even remember the kind of thing she said she wanted to do outside of just Trumpy shit, just because. Much like Trump, her campaign is just kind of the circus of her personality.
Yeah.
It feels like, oh, just another, oh, here comes another celebrity trying to be fucking leader, tell us what to do. Here's another Kanye West. Here's another Donald Trump. We shouldn't even have to be entertaining this fucking conversation. She should not be in the arena. Not a serious person. And I'm not just saying that because she's a reality star person.
Yeah, no, it's well, we'll see if she's able to take down Gavin Newsom, who seems to not be liked right now. So you might have another Hillary situation in your state, bruh. You might be looking to move.
I'll worry about one nightmare at a time. For now, you know, fuck the transphobia. That guy was a real psycho.
Yeah. Speaking of psychos, conservative news is having a field day with the conspiracy theories. around Kamala Harris being reported today, as we record, to have made a visit to Walter Reed. White House says that she went to Walter Reed for a routine checkup, and conservative news, including, of course, everybody's favorite Fox News, says otherwise. Everybody says it's because of her recent meeting with Texas Democrats, in which afterwards a couple of the members had tested positive for COVID. Everybody is claiming that because she came in contact with them, which the White House claims she did not have direct contact with those people, she tested positive for COVID, and that's why she went there. What said you?
The first thing I say is I find it kind of gross that we just know that she's at the hospital doing this stuff. Like, feels like you should have some level of privacy here. The fact that I know she just happened to take a trip to the hospital, whether it be for a COVID test or routine checkup, just feels like something I didn't need to know and shouldn't. I don't know if I'm off base with that one. It just feels inappropriate. But given the fact that we do know she went to the hospital, apparently, and that's something we have the right to know, I guess, I don't see why it matters either way. Like, if she felt the need to get a COVID test because she was near people with COVID, so what? That is kind of something you ought to do, right? That's not crazy. If you were worried about exposure to a certain thing and you wanted to just get it checked out, good on you for being fucking responsible. That said, I don't know what to make of that. Either they're creating a conspiracy out of something that wouldn't fucking matter if it was true. Am I crazy there?
No. Well, you're crazy only that you believe that there was something true for Fox News to say something like this.
I mean, to be clear, I'm not suggesting it is true. I'm just saying if it was
think
true,
about the
it's
people
not
who are
interesting to know.
But think about the people who are saying this. They don't need truth to say something. Remember, this is the same channel that said that this whole thing was a hoax. When reports were coming out that Trump may have contracted COVID when he went to Walter Reed, everybody was scamming as far as they were concerned. We were lying. Trump's not sick. You guys are making shit up. Then it comes to find out Trump did have COVID. And it's like, well, no, he's just tested positive. He's not showing any symptoms. Again, you're lying. You're just trying to like spread propaganda because it's a hoax, you know. But now COVID is 100% real, and the Dems are spreading it. Dirty fucking Dems. God damn it.
I mean, yeah, look, it's hypocritical and stupid and illogical. I guess just in this particular context, it's like, I don't even know what the point of the conspiracy is. It's like making a conspiracy that she took her garbage out on garbage day. Like, it's the kind of thing where, yeah, you're probably full of shit. But even if you're not full of shit, what are you really reporting here? Nothing. It's just mind-numbingly stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know what the big supposed gotcha would be if they were right.
Yeah, because she's vaccinated, so more than likely she's asymptomatic. Yeah, she's doing the proper protocol. And I can't see them needing to hide this. You know what I mean? Like, what would be the purpose for them to hide it? If anything, I feel like this would be something that the Democrats would be fully willing to come out and say it and be like, see, this shows you guys why you need to still fucking follow the rules. Because she's vaccinated. She was distanced. She was with people who were vaccinated. And she still got it. So you motherfuckers need to like stop acting like this shit is over. Like I refuse to believe that they would feel the need to hide it. So for what? It's not a political benefit for Democrats. Not a political, benefit for the people who keep telling you motherfuckers to be fucking careful.
I guess to play that quick devil's advocate role, you could argue it could be a political consequence because her getting tested might be used to say, by right-wing media to say, see, vaccination doesn't work.
Okay, but we've already
or
known
even
that.
Worse, they might even argue that she went there because of the vaccine or something like it. I don't know that it would be a positive for them to really jump on board.
But it's not news. It's been publicly made known by this party that, hey, you could still get it. Like fucking the guy they hate, Fauci, has gone on TV and constantly said that shit. So
yeah, no, it still wouldn't be interesting, but I don't know that it's helpful either. But again, it's bullshit. Like, it's likely bullshit anyway. It's just they're good at turning nothingness into a story, I guess. Into a conspiracy, rather.
Yeah. So I feel, well, and maybe it's just me. I feel less concerned by the rantings and ravings of lunatics than trying to turn this in something into nothing. But I get it because they've been able to like turn something out of nothing and do a lot of damage in recent history. So
I mean, yeah, if they get a fair number of people to believe them, and those people actually go out into the world and do some shit. I mean, hell, they're the one that spread that whole nonsense about oh God, what was it called? Critical race theory in schools and whatnot. Now all these fucking parents are out there harassing school boards over nothing.
All right. You're gonna tell my children that there have been political and social things done to hold back minorities, in particular Black people in this country? That's not true. Now, excuse me while I go vote for this guy who voted to take away people's voting rights in heavily minority-based areas. Like, fucking.
But I mean, again, they weren't even teaching it. It's like even that sort of sarcastic thing you just said was still a bit far because it kind of implies that they were even doing that in the first place.
This is so dumb. It's so fucking dumb. How are you know what? Let's move on because my head is already hurting. Speaking of a headache, Donald Trump was in the news as a new book because everybody has a book now that they're out of the Trump administration. It kills me, just as a side note, how everybody has books after they exit the scene of a crime. Like, it's so fucking wild. It's like you sit there through all of this stupid bullshit, and then you decide, I'm going to write a book so I can make some money and tell y'all. So we're like, see, we told you. It's like, it's too fucking late.
should I put this? There have been many books, and maybe this is just typical of presidents, but throughout Trump's journey through politics, there have been book after book after book. I remember a couple of years ago on the podcast, I had talked about what is that fucking guy's name? That's gonna piss me off. One of them, I've gone through like 2 or 3 of these books that just hit the shelves every few months about Trump. I don't know if he gets hard over the fact that so many books are written about him and his presidency, but it part of the reason why I saw these books and heard these stories, and I'm gonna mention in a second. I'm kind of numb to it because we get a Trump book like every few weeks, it feels like. And it just kind of follows the same thing. You know, people around him talk about some crazy ass shit that happened. It's kind of hard to pay attention to any of it because even within the context of one book, there would be like, you know, at least half a dozen crazy fucking things he said or did. It's just too hard to focus on any given one and remember the details about it and do anything about it.
Yeah, so real quick, for what we're talking about is General O'Malley, who was one of, I can't remember if he was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or not, but he, in his book, he mentioned that there was a strong fear that Trump was willing to use the military in sort of a coup to maintain power if he lost the election. He claims that they'd had conversations about things like that, and Trump has, of course, denied it. But yeah, it's like stuff like this. Like, I feel like you should not keep quiet if you're in a room with people talking about stuff like this. I don't care who the fuck you are. If the president of the United States, especially, is talking about potentially getting the military involved in maintaining his power, I feel like you need to do something or act or say something to somebody who can do something, or say it publicly to force someone to do something.
Okay, so first, just because I brought up the book I was referencing before was Trumpocracy by David Frum. But back onto this more immediate issue. I think it's hard for these people in these you know, government organizations. I shouldn't say political because he's general. Military organizations, all these groups that work largely on tradition and precedents and all that stuff, to figure out how to deal with an absolute fucking lunatic. And you've seen this time after time, year after year with Trump. People kind of pretending that they're still in the old world where, you know, precedents mattered, logic mattered, reality mattered, decency could be something you at least pretended to have. And maybe I'm being a bit unfair because I'm not in the room with them, but it does often feel like they don't take seriously enough the fact that Trump is just a very different entity from what you're used to dealing with. I think they keep trying to play by the old rules. And I'm sure somebody here will hear me say that and think, well, what are the new rules? I don't know, but I would, maybe that's not even a good analogy. Maybe you shouldn't be playing by new rules, but you should at least acknowledge that there is a person in the game who's not playing by the same rules as the rest of you. So that, you know, that's one issue there. Is I think too many people around him in government, in these organizations, can't mentally wrap their head around that kind of thing, around something that extreme. Second, I had a funny thought when I saw that story. I was like, Bill Maher is going to come back eventually, and he's going to be swinging his dick around because he keeps saying year after year, this motherfucker's going to start a coup. He might try to use the military, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the guests and people who come out, he'll ask, government officials, what do you do if he tries to use the military and whatever. A lot of people are kind of flippant in their responses because they just don't believe such a thing is possible. So I could already see him coming back and talking shit after this story once he's back from hiatus.
Yeah. It's so dumb. Like,
I know it is typical of the military to, plan for many occurrences, but it feels like we should, like the fact that they had to even have a conversation like this just makes me think, do you already not have plans to resist a crazy president if they try to use you for something fucked up? Like, what is the rules here? What is the procedure? Do you not know? Do you not have them? Or are they not in place? Because I would like to think that's, somewhere, somehow, there's some sort of procedure and shit and system in place already. So you shouldn't even have, what if Trump tries to use this for XYZ? The answer should just be he shouldn't be able to, and that's it. Like even having plans and planning and conversations like this make me concerned that you are not ready to deal with a president who's crazy.
You know what? I disagree. The only reason I disagree is because of this. This is what I sincerely think part of the problem is. Like, it's not that they don't have the ability to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with it. And they hid behind something that should have made them actually act. You always hear like, or at least I've heard recently, like all this stuff about we got to maintain the integrity of the office. The office of the presidency must be maintained to a high standard and all of this. And we have to protect the office of the presidency. They took that to mean no matter what, we can't sell the president out. Now, of course, they were going to do that anyway because they wanted to keep him in power. And as long as he was in power, the rest of them could do what the fuck they wanted. But that being said, it's a part of like the problem, like how the debate over, impeaching this guy for the things he did. Like, we can't have a president impeached. That's just not going to look good. We can't impeach the president because we don't want to like have that disgrace. No, those tools were put in place to do exactly what you are fucking screaming about, protecting the integrity of the office, which should mean the president is not above the law, and even he has to abide by the rules. This man refused to abide by the rules. He questioned the rules. He did things like, now, whether you think this is true or not, we've all heard of him say things to insinuate that he has thought of going against the rules. We've heard tape conversations of him. The thing that got him impeached first with the Ukraine, the conversations he had with people about, what could potentially happen on January 6th. This guy has shown from beginning to end a fucking willingness to fucking try to go outside and above the law to get what the fuck he wants. Why are you protecting this guy? He has no regard for anything that you claim that you stand for. Why the fuck are you doing that? And I know the answer is, for the most part, the people within those walls are just as bad as he in some ways. Some of y'all are just too fucking pussy, of course, like General Milley, in my opinion. Because if you are supposed to be this upstanding and, guy of integrity in the military and shit like that, no, You should have came out and said that shit. I don't care. He's your commander in chief. Your commander in chief has broke the law. Go fucking, Jack Nicholson and treat him like Jack Nicholson in that movie. I can't think of the name of where Tom Cruise was like, you can't handle the truth. Do that. Don't fucking protect him because of his like rank and role. Fuck that.
But I mean, even beyond those people who had a vested interest in protecting Trump in particular, I think that lends to what I was saying about like the old rules, because take the line of the line of presidents throughout history, for example. It's kind of understood that a former president ought not badmouth the next person. You know what I mean? There's sort of this built-in tradition of not going after certain motherfuckers a certain way. I don't know how to explain it, but you even saw it from Obama a little bit at first. But even he eventually had to start, more and more talking shit about Trump, because like it just got, I mean, it started off pretty bad, but it just got too fucking far, too fucking often, to where even he had to say some things. But it's not normal for a president, as far as I know, to really go after their successor. And I think you see that in many parts of government. Like, I mean, not as much in Congress because, they all want to keep getting elected and look good for their constituents and all of that shit, so I'm sure. But at that high level, there is this sort of, I don't know what the word is or how to exactly describe this, but there's sort of a resistance to making like the commander-in-chief in particular look bad. And I think in his case, he always makes himself look bad already. So that shouldn't have been a calculation for you. You don't have to worry about making the president look bad on the global stage. He looks bad on the global stage already. So it's not really relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the bigger point is the one you made about just doing it because it's right. But like, I do, and this is kind of why I tried to bring that shit up at first, because like it feels like they're sort of insistent on this precedent of not undermining the office of the president and not willing to acknowledge that the president is a person separate from the office. And you can't really maintain this desire to, not make the president look bad when you have a bad president. It doesn't really work. Like that instinct might have been more reasonable with somebody like, just to pull a more recent example, like Bush, for example, right? Where like, even if you don't agree with shit he says or you have problems with some of the things he does or whatever, it's not so beyond the pale that you should undermine the presidency, arguably. But
is it undermining it? That's the thing.
Well, my point is, I don't think you should. I don't agree with the notion that you shouldn't. Anyway, I think that whole feeling they seem to have built up is wrong.
I think you don't understand what I mean. Like when I think of the word you're undermining, you're going out of your way to do something like outside of the rules. You're being malicious in a way that you're in the wrong, not quote unquote the morally wrong, or you're not holding up the traditions. No, you're doing something like, you're trying to blackmail someone for information to expose things like that. That's what I think about undermining. You coming out and saying, hey, you heard what he said? He said that he's thinking about using the military to fucking secure power. Let me take this to fucking CNN and drop this to them. That is not malicious. That is fucking, he's breaking the law. If you can't get the Justice Department to do anything about it, then you got to say something to somebody to bring attention to it. That's not undermining anything. That's maintaining the integrity of the office and the government. You can't undermine something if you're trying to stop them from breaking the law. Like, you don't undermine criminals. You know what I mean? Nobody says you undermined a gang boss because you told that he murdered somebody. You know,
I mean, I don't disagree with the point, because I do feel like, especially on the global stage, really holding a president accountable like that quick and hard, if anything, makes our democracy look even better compared to, you know, theocracies. That was the word I'm looking for here. Not just the theocracies, you know, the dictatorships around the world, because a lot of people increasingly look at America. It's like, well, you guys talk about freedom and blah, 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 but look at Trump. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. You know, You're just as bad as the rest of us. So I do think being able to quickly and strongly hold the president to account would help boost the talk we have about American freedoms and democracy and all that stuff. I don't disagree with you. I don't know that the people at that level in government are good at making the distinction you just made, I guess is the point I'm making. Because I feel like if you go back to like Nixon's time, there were probably people who were like, well, we can't do this. He's the fucking president, even though he very obviously committed crimes.
Right. But no, from what I've been told, they actually were of the mind of me back then. That, like, I'm sure there were people saying, but the majority of because remember, he got fucking railed by his own party. They were like, get this motherfucker the fuck out of here. You know. So I think the majority was, while I'm sure there were just people who were, you know, doing what you said, the majority was like, no, we can't have this. The president's doing this shit. Come on. I need that type of integrity back into politics. For real, for real.
True. I mean, I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, over the years, we keep hearing these stories, and you know, we could talk about Millie being XYZ, but it's not the only story like this where somebody claims to have heard something kind of fucking crazy with this, and you know, you're a better political historian than I, so maybe you can give some context to this. There seems to be this sort of move where if they see something crazy is about to go down, the strategy is to sort of resign in protest. And I think that was one of Millie's strategy too, is for like a bunch of people to resign in protest if you tried to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
Why is that like the go-to? Because they don't have any other option? Because story after story, year after year, especially with Trump, but you know, before that as well, like it's always this sort of move to like, all right, fuck this shit, we're gonna resign, instead of like telling anybody about anything. Is my feeling that is like the go-to strategy wrong? And if not, why is that the go-to? Like, why is resign the move instead of, I don't know, harass the Justice Department or tell the news? Is that a crime or something? Or is that?
No. I mean, I'm sure in some cases you sign certain NDAs and things like that. So yeah, you're probably breaking that NDA, which could cause you to get in trouble in some way. I don't think it's an arrestable offense. I think that you could end up having some type of like, you know, comeuppance, of course. It might damage your political career because people within your circle probably won't trust you anymore. But no, it's not like, you know, fuck it. This isn't, you know, the fucking Victorian era or something where you fucking like, you know, or better yet, this ain't Game of Thrones where you try to like fucking tell that, you know, Cersei killed the king, and then she has you beheaded. You know, you ain't gonna end up like Ned Stark. Okay, people. You might have trouble. In fact, you might not be able to work within certain political circles, but I feel like you kind of end up getting movie deals and book deals even more by being the person who took down the big bad wolf, you know?
But I don't even understand that concern either, because if you feel so strongly that you're going to resign from this position that, you know, in some cases is about as high as you could fucking go without being the president themselves or in the cabinet or something, like if I was one of these people and I was thinking, all right, I'm going to resign because of this thing, I kind of acknowledge that I might be giving up a political career anyway. Like, that's how fucking serious it is for me to make that sort of move in the first place. So I guess I understand what you said there, but like, and maybe I'm naive, but if I was making the calculation to the point where I'm willing to throw away the highest level position I've ever had over it, like, it seems to me that that is by definition, meaning that it's that serious. So who cares if your political career is over? It probably
like,
is.
if you're gonna do the whole I resign thing, resign and then be like, hey, now that I don't have a job and I don't have to worry about, you know, the quote unquote integrity of my office by telling something that I signed, you know, an agreement to not tell, hey, I'm free and clear of that now. I don't work here no more. So let me like, it's just like you leave a bad job. You don't not talk about that bad job. You probably talk more shit than you ever did in your life after you leave that job. So why don't you go and tell?
I think that's what makes that calculation confusing to me.
Right, because like you're just quitting to be complicit. Why quit? You're gonna be complicit anyway. And even if you do a tell-all book, it's always some shit like, yeah, it's like everybody knew this. I'm just gonna say, yeah, he did. Like, come on.
But a lot of these stories we hear, you know, I could understand wanting to be serious about maintaining a level of secrecy around government or whatever, but a lot of these cases are not like national security issues. You know what I mean? Like, knowing these things aren't going to affect troops out in the field across the world or anything like that. There's no real danger to most, like, these are stories I can think of. Like, there's no actual danger for anybody other than the president or, you know, whoever else was involved, which makes some of the calculations even more confusing, because if it was like a military thing and you had soldiers in the field that might die or something like that, I might see the argument, but it's pretty much never that. It's like the worst thing that's going to happen is it will make the president look bad and they might get impeached, which is kind of what should happen. So,
yeah,
not all information needs to be kept at the same level of secrecy. Which I guess is why I'm asking you the question. It's like, I just never quite understand the reasoning these people have. Because even when they say like, oh, you know, we have a plan to resign or we're going to resign or we did, it's like, it's not that fucking admirable because you didn't really fix it. You just kind of didn't tell us about it. And maybe you sleep better at night. All right, sorry. Maybe I'm going a little far there. So let me kind of back up. But you know, if you just gotta leave and you don't really do anything to stop the thing that you left for, what did you really accomplish other than not being part of it?
Right. Like, you just, I mean,
even if you don't feel like in that position, you can personally stop it. Like, at least do something, fuck.
It kind of reminded me of, like, we were talking about Bill Cosby last week when one of the moms from The Fresh Prince came at Felicia Rashad and was like, you know, we all knew he was doing it. It's like, okay, like, and again, I understand people having a fear of things, but that being said, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, you fear like job retribution and all that, but you gonna let these people have that happen, you know?
But even in their case, that made more sense to me because,
Yeah.
all right, they were afraid for their jobs and they made the decision to keep the job. It's not like, these government people who were willing to throw away the job and still not do the thing.
Yeah, that's true. Because it's not like these women quit Hollywood and then didn't say anything.
Right. Like, if they had done that, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? But like, at least they're, even though I don't, morally necessarily agree with that move, it is a more logical move than what I see here.
Yeah,
I guess that's another thing I'm getting tired of too, is like hearing these stories about these people who did or are going to resign, and it's like, to what end? Why? What are you accomplishing with that? Are you? Do you feel like you're drawing attention to this problem by resigning? You know what will draw attention to it? Actually telling us about it.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm being shitty, but
no, because it's like you're affecting the lives of millions with your decisions. It's like, think about like if someone would have came out and told him, would have acted on something that he did within his first year or his first 2 years or first, like, early enough to get this motherfucker the fuck out of here. How different may have things been? Maybe things would have got worse with Pence. Maybe they would have got better with Pence. But you don't let him like potentially do these things. It's just nah.
I remember early on people having this debate about whether things would be worse with Pence because, he probably has a brain and could actually get things accomplished. Honestly, looking back at it, I just have a hard time believing things would be worse with Pence. I think maybe some LGBT stuff might be worse, stuff like that. But like, I don't know. I have difficulty believing like our relationships with other countries, for example, would be in the state they were post-Trump with Pence in the way. I don't know. It's just that now that we're past the Trump presidency, I'm just like, to your point about if we'd gotten Trump out sooner, a lot of the things he did just wouldn't have happened under Pence because Pence just doesn't have much of a reason to do that stuff. Like some of the stuff Trump would do is purely because of his own ego. You know what I mean? There weren't always things the Republican Party necessarily wanted. The Republican Party might put up with it and defend him because they have no fucking spine and they wanted to ride the Trump wave. But like, not every Trump move was a Republican desire.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing. It's like you would have thought like for the integrity of your party, but we soon found out there is no integrity within that party. So
Indeed.
Yeah, it's just wild. Wild. All right. So final topic. It is, I kind of wanted to bring this up because I told you I was going to give you my answer to this. Me and you were having a conversation about a tweet that I sent you, and let me go back to the tweet where someone had tweeted out that men are not corrected offline, which is why it's so easy for them to convince themselves that their wrong opinions are only wrong on the internet. To which they got a reply where somebody tried to correct them in the spelling of their with the wrong spelling of their, which led to somebody tweeted it was like the first thing is somebody being loud and wrong. All right. But that's besides the point.
God. I hope they deleted that tweet at least.
Huh?
I hope they deleted that tweet. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, I know. Like, THEIR is actually the right spelling where you're talking about a group, not THEY apostrophe RE. That is, a contraction of they are. You don't say, that men are trying to convince themselves that they are wrong opinions are only wrong on the internet.
Right. And they had an emoji and everything, like,
gee, like I just got you. Ha ha ha.
Right. Like they're so fucking smug about it. And it's like, oh my God. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you were that was just extra wrong. And I actually believe that they both were wrong. To be quite honest, because so we were talking about this, and I was telling you, like, I understood what they were trying to say is that, like, a lot of people seem to these days to take things and kind of square it off as to say, like, well, I don't hear this type of stuff when I'm around people offline. So clearly it's just people online just doing whatever. In particular, like a lot of people just in this case would probably say you're just being a social justice warrior or some benign statement to make themselves feel better about their ineptitude. Now, you were saying...
Is that prompting me to answer?
Yes.
No. Basically, I wasn't quite agreeing with the hard line being drawn between the internet and the real world, which is... I said a few things. One was that I do think a lot of people are willing to be pretty vocal in real life. Part of that is because I've been in a college campus in relatively recent memory. And those SJWs, as they're called, are definitely willing to talk to you in person, whether you like it or not. I kind of argued that I can see why one would think people are more willing to call out folks on the internet, because more people can see you being an asshole on the internet. If I say something like sexist in a room, really only the people in the room kind of know that and can respond to me. And maybe they're not as comfortable responding to a stranger on that kind of topic. But if I say something sexist on the internet, like thousands or hundreds of thousands, depending on my profile on the internet, could see that and respond. So I think that's one reason you might feel a bit of a difference. So yeah, I didn't agree that she was thinking about the difference between the physical and digital world correctly. And beyond that, I was making the point that, because she mentioned dudes in particular, I was like, the kind of dudes that are going to dismiss shit on the internet by making an excuse like, well, that's just assholes on the internet, are the kind of people who want to do what they want to do regardless. So they're going to dismiss you in real life too if you do that. For example, if they want to say something sexist or have like sexist ideas, they're just going to maintain those ideas because they're just fucking like that. Like, people will find any general reason to not change their minds or their behaviors. Maybe that's a little cynical of me to say that, but people find a reason to be dicks, however they have to find it.
Yeah.
And I have one more thing that I didn't point out in my response, but I'll let you tell me why I'm wrong on that stuff first.
No. Go ahead and make your last point, and then I'll tell you why all of you are wrong, because I'm right.
My only last thing I was going to say there was, because we were kind of like deciphering what she meant there, and I was kind of like thinking through like one of the examples you'd given, and just kind of like trying to wrap my head around what was being said there. One thing I'd like to see on the internet, I know it's kind of hard on Twitter, but when people just kind of makes these sort of statements like these, I do kind of wish they would feel more of an obligation to like really elaborate on their idea. And, not everybody needs to be as like, I know I could type a book if I'm thinking about something, but I do wish people would like provide examples, kind of like really dig into the idea, explain it a bit more. Because people would just say like a random phrase or something and just like throw it into the ether. And oftentimes you don't really have any context. You can't easily tell what they're thinking about or, the examples they might have had in mind. I do think it would be nice if when people did shit like that and wanted to make a point, if they felt more obligation to really fucking give us a more complete dump of their brain. You know what I mean? Because like, sometimes you and I will have conversations about these things. And like, I feel like both of us have to kind of build, depending on which one of us agrees with them, kind of have to like build their argument for them. Because they don't really give much besides like one sentence.
All right, so why are all of you people wrong? Here it is from the old man.
We're black.
No. Well,
I think we all were black.
No, that's the reason why you shouldn't have an opinion. That's not why you're wrong. No. But no. Okay. So here's the thing. Like, I disagree with the context in which she put it. I do not think that she put it in a very good context. The only thing that I would say is that I got kind of where she was going. That's why I said what I said to you. Where I disagree with, as far as you were saying, is only slightly, in the sense that, yeah, people are more vocal, I would say, or would I say people are more willing to be dismissive of things and aren't as vocal offline than they are online, only in the sense that those who are more vocal online are able to do so because, I mean, those who are more vocal offline are able to do so because of online, if that makes sense. Okay, so you being much younger than me, you've grown up in an era where you don't know what life is without social media. So I guess for me, I think social media in the positive way has created an environment where people of your generation and moving forward are now much more expressive, be it online or offline, because they feel like they can be. I think social media in a weird way has made it better to be expressive as a person in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to serious causes. Like, you see a lot more organization and things happening now, at least from my perspective, in my lifetime, than you would have 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Because now you have different platforms where you can reach more people and you can get them initiated and be more willing. It's the reason why you see all these videos of people on their phone catching people saying things in public to other people, standing up for themselves, fighting for certain issues. I think because for those who felt like they didn't have a way to have a voice, social media has created that, and it helps propel them to do so even more outside. Because you got to think, growing up for me, you had pretty much two outlets. You had TV or print media, and unless you were somebody of influence, you weren't going to get on TV unless you got arrested, like you were on the news, and then the news was going to just show what they were going to show. So you had to rely more on print media to get your message out, which was a more slower moving, harder thing to do. Because if you look back at like some of the like historically significant social groups like the Black Panthers, civil rights movement, things like that, you know, with the exception of the Malcolm X's and the Martin Luther Kings, you didn't get a lot of media coverage. And even then, you didn't really get a lot of media coverage. You got a lot of people recording them talk and then that being sent out to people who can get their hands on it. But it wasn't like, you know, they were seeking out these people to be on TV. So you had to put it more in print and try to, you know, get it out there more vocally. Now you don't have to get it out there vocally, but I do think that, you know, after it kind of went down in the 80s, like, because the 80s and early 90s, it wasn't that big in the time that I grew up. But social media has kind of raised it back up. So I understand where that standpoint would come from, especially if you're an older person. Because if you grew up in the 80s and early, like, you know, mid, late 90s, the vocal like stuff wasn't that big. Now it's gotten better, but you're still thinking like more social media because everybody's connected to social media and you see it more on social media. If that makes sense. Like, I think it's just that because social media is such a larger presence, it kind of like has become the thing that people pay attention to more. College campuses has always probably been the more vocal places, of course, I would say. I would totally agree with you. College campuses has always been the like hub for all the people to like want to speak out. It's something about college that does that. And then after people leave college, it's like, okay, they shut the fuck up again. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thought because we've talked about, you know, being vocal, the ability to like spread your message on social media compared to pre-social media times, in the sense that it's much easier for you to like go viral and spread your message to more people. But I hadn't really thought about the idea that social media itself might make people a little bit more communicative, because I would listen to people talk about, you know, years before, like before Trump even, talking about how we didn't used to talk about politics this much, you know, at work and schools, around the dinner table, blah, blah, well, maybe a little bit more around the dinner table, but, you know, we didn't used to talk about socio-political issues as much. It was just kind of like, hey, I had to use the phrase, but, you know, don't ask, don't tell on that kind of shit. And even growing up, I kind of feel that way. Like, I didn't remember grown-ups really just out loud talking about all these sorts of things all the time. But that said, a lot of us are on social media now, and we talk about that shit on social media all the time. So it might be training people to talk about shit like that a little bit more often.
Yeah, because like the people that you're talking about this stuff in public now, you're probably in some way talking to them about it on social media first. And then when you see them, you're talking about this shit like, you know, or like I said, social media kind of encourages it because it's like, did you see this tweet by such and such? Or did you see this post by such and such? It's like, you know, it engages you in the conversation more.
Because I have people who, because I remember like going to lunch with some coworkers and one of them was like a Trump supporter or something. And you can tell like he kind of initiated the conversation, and you could like tell the talking points he had pretty much came from the internet. You know what I mean? Like if you pay enough attention to social media and like that kind of bubble, you recognize where the shit he was mentioning comes from. So like, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in that sense, but it is a weird sort of catalyst for a lot of people to start dragging that shit into the regular world and talk about those things more often. I never really made that link before, but I'm thinking about it now.
Yeah, because again, like we didn't have discussions about, like my parents didn't have discussions about Ronald Reagan or, you know, George Bush Sr. Clinton, you know, outside of like the Monica Lewinsky thing and the time he showed up on Arsenio Hall and played the saxophone, you weren't having political discussions about what Clinton was doing. Again, it wasn't until the late 90s when like we got into you know, the second part of the Bush era, like, you know, the Bush era of things and stuff like that, that yeah, I would say 2000 when, you know, you had that shit going. That would probably be when you really started to get the focus started to go shift towards social media, but and even then it wasn't heavy. But like once Obama got in, I would say, then it started to really ramp up.
I don't remember talking about senators this much as a kid, or like hearing adults talk about senators so much either.
Right.
Like,
that's the thing. It's like,
I mean, maybe the presidents, but like to the point where even just on social media, certain senators or, you know, congressmen and women in general have their own sort of online persona.
right.
Like I can't imagine like having talked about somebody like AOC. Like I can't imagine my parents talking that much about a person like her when I was a kid.
Right. And you know what? I take that back. I said 2000, but I'm going to say 2010. Because you didn't really, like, people didn't really, like, think about it. How old is Twitter? Twitter
I don't even know if it's 10 years old. Might be less than that.
Yeah, see, Twitter didn't come out until, it came out it was founded in 2006. But I feel like it didn't pop off until around 2010.
Yeah.
You know, people didn't really use, because, you know, Facebook was a thing. You know, we had Facebook, we had MySpace, but it was just for kicking it and trying to find somebody to go out with. And social media really for a long time wasn't a place. It was a place for people who, you know, excuse the pun, but who wanted to socialize, and then creeps and weirdos.
Honestly, like when you talked about that evolution, I just thought like, yeah, like because I remember the sort of shift from like MySpace to being like in my age group. It's like MySpace is for kids. Adults use Facebook. that sort of move we all had toward Facebook,
right?
But like nobody even,
which is weird. Side note: Facebook started off as just a college app for college students, which is
look.
crazy.
I thought it was dumb even at the time because I was like, personally,
no,
I
like back
better.
when I was a like college aged person. Sadly, oh my god!
I just want to point out that I always resented the move to Facebook because I was like, on MySpace you could like customize your fucking profile with CSS, add music.
I was just about to say, yo, you could put playlists on that shit.
Right, like
Tom was like a fucking man. He was the man. Tom was the man for that shit.
I just couldn't stand that fucking move because I was like, bro, Facebook just has less interesting features.
It really does.
So I just wanted to point that out, that I fucking resented that. I don't know where that messaging came from, but like it hit my age group like a ton of fucking bricks all at once, and everybody was just like, yeah, this MySpace shit is immature. Whatever. I got kind of lost in that angry tangent. But yeah, like if I think about it, around that time, I would have been like, you know, during the MySpace to Facebook exodus, I would have been a teenager, right? Which is when a lot of kids are talking about all sorts of dumb shit, you know, getting in their rebellious years, talking about how the fucking adults don't know anything, the government's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Yet even then, I don't really remember my peer group being all that engaged in political issues or social issues like that. Like even to they said that back then we were becoming more aware of like the LGBTQ community and becoming more sensitive toward that shit. People even then weren't really talking about it that much. Maybe a few people as they were starting to discover their own sexual orientation and, you know, gender identity and all that shit. But it was rare. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Whereas now it's like every fucking day. And I hadn't really thought about that until you said it, but like, yeah, there's, I don't know where exactly in time to place it, but there is sort of like this sudden switch from just socializing to constant socio-political talk.
Yeah. I mean, because we thinking it back to like, you know, the early social media phase, like pre YouTube and all of that. Like you had Facebook for the college people at that time. You had MySpace for the people, you know, it was the same age. I mean, you had your Black Planet for Black people to go, like, oh my God, Black Planet was just wild. Like all things like that, they were all built to like, hey, you want to meet people, you want to hang out, you want to possibly go and get a date, come here. You know, AOL chat rooms and things like that. Yahoo Messenger. Who the fuck uses Messenger pro apps anymore?
It's so strange to think about because we call it social media now. Like, I don't remember the term social media being that popular back then, but it was a far more pro-social environment at the time.
Yeah. It was all about the social,
about
like the social only aspect. Like
I'm not normally the kind of guy who is nostalgic, but yeah, you could just sort of like talk to other motherfuckers. I remember meeting a few people just on MySpace.
There are people who are my friends, like from places like AOL chat rooms and stuff like that. Like shit, co-host of His Point, Her View. We met in a fucking AOL chat room, and we've been friends for damn near, God, it's coming close to 25 years, maybe 30. Jesus Christ.
But yeah, it's strange. Like I was gonna say, you know, in fairness to other people's experience, I was not attractive enough to warrant any attention from creeps and predators and shit. But
yeah, that's what social media now. It's become this thing where like the opinions have become the like main appeal of it, and so you get more conversation in the world. It's just wild.
I mean, I you know, I suppose it's not a bad thing that people are more engaged with this stuff, but I think kind of like hopping off the thing I said earlier about wishing that when people kind of have these statements, they were willing to put more context and elaboration behind it, so you got a better sense of what they were trying to communicate. Kind of the shame of so many people being so willing to talk about this shit all the time is that they're just not really that good at it. Like, there's no army of like high school English teachers running around saying like, elaborate more on this point. You misspell there. There's no magic red pen army on the internet to deal with that kind of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's just an interesting fact, like, of how like the evolution of how things have went because of social media. Like, it goes to show there are some positives, even though most social media is just a fucking cesspool at times. It has made a positive. It has made people a lot more aware and a lot more willing to discuss things that are important. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was an interesting way to end this. Have you been reading? Since you've been vacationing, you've just been in Florida soaking up the sun and COVID.
I just started over because I wasn't paying attention, but I did start a book by Kate Darling. It's called The New Breed. She works in robot ethics, essentially. I think we might have had some conversations about it a while back, but just like the ethics around robotics and shit like that. I was planning to listen to a bunch of it during my traveling back across the country, but a lot of annoying shit distracted me, so I didn't get to enjoy it between the screaming children and the flight that kept changing gates, so I had to keep walking around the airport every half hour.
Yeah. Well, at least you don't have to worry about that for a couple of weeks. You can go back to all the screaming kids on planes and the rude people. Hey, maybe you'll get somebody to get duct taped on your trip.
Is it wrong that I think you should be able to just duct tape the children? Like, it's not going to kill them.
I mean,
I don't know. Like, let the kids be awake so they can like see the plane take off and see the sky for like half an hour, and then just like spray them with some kind of knockout gas so they shut the fuck up for.
I know.
I feel like I'm saying something that's going to get me in trouble, but I feel like
you're saying something that we've all have said shit like this before about children on the airplanes. Like, it's just like children in movies. Why? Should they even be allowed? Should they even be allowed?
I mean, duct tape them, knock them out, something. Like, I'm even being nice and saying like they should at least have the experience of being
a courtesy sedative for each child.
Being able to see
as they get on the plane. Yeah. I know they say it's wrong to like, knock somebody out to flight because you want them aware in case of an emergency. So I feel like you don't need that for children. I really feel like
they're not going to be useful.
You can just drug them. Yeah, they're going to panic.
What the fuck are they going to do? Are they going to handle the fucking emergency door if they're awake? Come on.
Yeah, so
they're probably safer being asleep so their parents can carry them.
Yes. So that's our politically incorrect moment of the show. Drug all children on flights.
I was nice enough to say let them be awake long enough to at least
drug all children,
but then knock them out. It's good for them and it's good for the rest of us. Fucking Christ.
Yes.
I mean, hell, it's good for their lungs and their fucking vocal cords because like these motherfuckers will just scream for hours on end.
Especially if it's a flight that's over an hour. Oh my God, you cannot entertain a child on the flight.
I watched that because during one of the flights, this dad was right next to me with his kid. And we hadn't even taken off yet. And this motherfucker was desperate to entertain that kid. Like he's like trying to put up the screen on the chair and start one of those little Pixar movies or what the fuck ever. And the kid's just like hopping up and like dragging the screen back down. All this shit. And he's like, I'm trying to save the parents too, bro. Like I felt bad for this guy. As annoying as this kid was, I felt genuinely bad for this.
Yeah, see? And he would have been better off if he would have just drugged the motherfucker.
Fuck me, dude.
Drug him.
Drug your children. Save America.
Mandatory drugging. Yeah. All right. Let's go. I'm going to get a lot of flack for that, but I mean, hey. Yeah.
All right, take us out. I'm not changing my statement. I think any parent that doesn't agree is wrong. Fuck you.
Yeah. All right. Let's get out of here. Sponsors. If you want to support people who make comments like that, I mean, y'all do it to Rush Limbaugh, and y'all did it for him when he was alive. And what's the name of that crazy fucking guy? I can't think of his name. The one who's just like super conspiracy theorist, and then be selling
Alex
the
Jones?
proteins. Yeah, Alex Jones. Like, y'all give them people, y'all give Fox News, advertisements. You can do it for us. We'll be happy to promote your products. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate you. If you have not been offended by what I said at the end, please come back. Feel free to like, subscribe. Remember, you don't have to just watch here on YouTube. You can also check us out on SoundCloud. So if you want to just listen to me say rude things, you don't have to look at the screen or look at a video to do so. You can just pop on SoundCloud and do it there. All right. We will see you guys next time on The Reason Reborn. Peace.